You know, every single second of every day, there is a silent war being fought inside your body. It is a conflict on a microscopic scale, with trillions, literally trillions of invaders constantly trying to breach your defenses. Winning this war? Well, it's the difference between life and death, and it's all thanks to the most sophisticated military force on the entire planet, your immune system. So to really get a handle on this, let's picture your body as this high-tech fortress. And I don't just mean a simple wall. I mean, this thing is under constant siege from bacteria, viruses, you name it. To survive, this fortress needs an integrated defense network. We're talking a full-blown military, complete with frontline sentinels, intelligence officers gathering intel, and heavy artillery ready to roll at a moment's notice. Okay, so this incredible military fights its war on two totally different fronts. And each one has its own strategy, its own troops, its own rules of engagement. It's this constant trade-off between acting fast and acting smart. Now check this out. This graph just visualizes that two-front war perfectly. See that red line? That's your innate immunity. Look how fast it is. It responds within hours. Boom. It's an immediate, brute force defense. But notice it doesn't really get much stronger over time. Now look at the blue line. That's your adaptive immunity. Man, it is slow to start, right? Takes days to really get going. But once it kicks in, the magnitude of the response is just absolutely massive and incredibly targeted.
So here's the bottom line. You can think of your innate system as the frontline grunts. They're immediate, they're non-specific, meaning they pretty much attack anything that looks foreign, and they're germline encoded, which is a fancy way of saying their attack plan is hardwired from birth. On the flip side, your adaptive system, these are your elite special forces. They're delayed, sure, but they are highly specific, designing custom-made weapons for each unique enemy. And this is the most important part. They have memory. They learn.
All right, let's meet the troops. Any army is defined by its soldiers, and believe me, the immune system has a diverse and highly specialized roster. Every single cell you see here has a critical job to do, from the first responders hitting the beach to the commanders coordinating the entire war from headquarters. First up, from what's called the myeloid lineage, we've got the frontline forces of that innate system. So meet the neutrophils. These are your kamikaze infantry. They are the most numerous, they rush to the battle, they kill invaders, and then they die in the process. It's intense. Then you've got the macrophages, aka the big eaters. These guys are like tissue sentinels that just gobble up pathogens and, just as important, clean up all the battlefield debris. And crucially, you have the dendritic cells. Think of them as the intelligence officers who gather intel on the enemy to kick off the next phase of the attack. And this gives us a great look at the other side of the army, the lymphoid lineage, which makes up our adaptive special forces. Here, we've got B cells, which are basically mobile weapon factories that produce antibodies. We have the T cells, the brilliant commanders and assassins who both coordinate the attack and kill infected cells directly. And finally, the natural killer, or NK cells. They act as the military police, constantly patrolling for any of our own cells that have gone rogue or are trying to hide their identity. So, we've met all the players. Now let's see them in action. Let's say you get a splinter. It breaks your skin. The outer walls of the fortress have just been breached. And trust me, an alarm is about to go off. The response follows this really strict breach protocol. First, the breach itself lets in bacteria. Second, resident macrophages on the scene immediately detect these invaders. Third, these macrophages sound the alarm by releasing a flood of chemical signals. And fourth, those signals recruit reinforcements, like those kamikaze neutrophils who literally squeeze out of your blood vessels and just swarm the site of infection. And this is why this really matters to you. The next time you get a cut and it gets all red, hot, and swollen, remember this. That feeling of inflammation, that's not the sickness itself. That is the sound of the cavalry arriving. It is the physical sign of your body's military mobilizing for war. It's a sign that your defenses are working exactly like they should. On a battlefield like this, communication is literally everything. The cells coordinate using things called cytokines, which are like different radio signals. Some are like GPS trails for other cells to follow. Others act like air raid sirens, warning neighboring cells that there's a virus on the loose. At the same time, a system of proteins called complement acts like a series of chemical booby traps, either punching holes directly in bacteria or just tagging them with a giant eat me sign for the macrophages. But what happens when the frontline grunts and the booby traps just aren't enough to contain the invasion? Well, that's when the call goes out. It's time to bring in the big guns. It's time to activate the elite forces of the adaptive immune system. The entire elite response kicks off with this one crucial moment, the intelligence handover. Remember our dendritic cell, the intelligence officer? After it captures a piece of the enemy, it travels to a command center, like a lymph node, and it physically presents that piece, called an antigen, to a T-cell commander. This isn't just a suggestion. This is the official briefing that kicks off a highly specific, tailor-made counterattack.
Okay, so once they're briefed, these T-cell commanders differentiate and specialize into all these different roles. Some become generals, directing the battle against specific types of threats. Others become diplomats, whose job it is to suppress the immune response to prevent friendly fire and collateral damage. And then you have the CD8 plus T-cells, the assassins. Their one and only mission is to hunt down and kill any of your own cells that have been compromised by a virus.
At the very same time, with orders from a T-cell general, the B cells get activated. They start multiplying like crazy, transforming into these things called plasma cells. Think of these as dedicated weapon factories that do one thing and one thing only: churn out a massive, overwhelming swarm of antibodies, the guided missiles of your immune system.
And right here, we see the amazing result of these two different strategies in action. On the left, you see antibodies just swarming bacteria that are floating around outside your cells. Now, they can't kill directly, but they tag the invaders for destruction, basically making them irresistible targets for those big eater macrophages. On the right, for an enemy like a virus that hides inside our cells, well, the T-cell assassin docks with the infected cell and delivers a deadly payload, forcing it to self-destruct. Two different threats, two incredibly elegant and deadly solutions.
So the battle is won, the threat is eliminated. But here's the amazing part. The adaptive immune system doesn't just forget. It creates veterans, memory cells that will remember the face of this specific enemy for years, sometimes for a lifetime.
This graph right here shows you the sheer power of those veterans. That first little hill, that's the initial response we've been talking about. It's slow, it's resource intensive. But that second, gigantic wave, that is the secondary response. If that same enemy ever dares to show its face again, the memory cells make sure the counterattack is exponentially faster and stronger. The invader is often wiped out before you even realize you're sick.
This leads to a really fascinating and powerful question, doesn't it? If the second response is so much better than the first, is there a way to prepare our military for an invasion without having to suffer through that first bloody war? Yes, absolutely. And that is exactly what a vaccine is. It is a brilliant hack. It's a training exercise for your immune system. It doesn't matter if it's a weakened virus, a dead one, or just a small piece of one. A vaccine shows the enemy's face to your army, allowing it to build up a force of veterans and create that powerful immunological memory, all without the danger of a real infection. But you have to understand, a system this powerful can also fail in some pretty catastrophic ways. It can suffer what you might call a breach of contract. In autoimmunity, the system completely loses its ability to tell friend from foe, and the army tragically begins to attack its own fortress. In immunodeficiency, the army is weakened or its data is corrupted, basically leaving the fortress gates wide open to any and all invaders. Ultimately, our very survival exists on a knife's edge. Health is this delicate stalemate, this perfect balance. Your immune system has to be aggressive enough to destroy every foreign threat it encounters, but at the same time, it must be tolerant enough to spare every single one of the trillions of cells that make you who you are. Every disease is just a tipping of this scale, and it's a constant reminder of just how incredible this integrated defense network truly is.